Hey, Shalom Akim. First and foremost, call hello Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rakawadash. Double honors once again go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who deserve double honors. Salutations go out also to the fellow Akim out there on the highways and byways, pushing the truth with all honesty and sincerity. Trying to wake up the remaining, hopefully, like this is Nama of the DC camp. And I got this book in last Friday, almost a week, complete week now. Very good book. All right, it says how white folks got so rich. All right, and the untold story of American white supremacy. So this focuses on America. All right, this Akim and a few Aqua that happen to catch this is nothing but a book of receipts, a table of contents. All the shit, at least on paper, that they've done to us, how they paper fucked us, more or less. All right. It starts off Indian land grab, or the tribes of Gad. Head writes, it says the greatest land giveaway to whites or Edomites. Jefferson's curse, slavery, the most profitable business of all time. Sugar to cotton to oil, whites gotta have it. All right, I mean, you're talking about greed and avarice, covetousness, it's all here. So I just thought we'd go over a little bit of it, have some scriptures, because you gotta understand, this is the second page of the table of contents. All right. And the first, hold on, section here says working hard or hardly working. It says observe the operations of the white man. He is successful. He makes no excuses for his failures. He works hard in collective manner. You do the same. All right, and that's, guess what? So, Elijah Muhammad or Mr. Poole. All right. And it goes on to say, American white supremacy sits tenuously on a rickety scaffold of myths, lies, and deception. But its physical reality sits firmly on a rock-solid economic foundation. And guess who's at the base of that? All right. A century and a half after the end of legal, I like how they put that, legal slavery, white households in the United States are worth $144,200, almost 13 times the wealth of black households at $11,200. Nearly 40% of black families have zero or negative net worth. Even high-income blacks have assets of only $18,000, while middle-income whites have $74,000 in assets. So this was rigged from the start. And in another book I have, Dr. Claude Anderson, he did a book years ago I used to have, I can't find it. It was called Black Labor, White Wealth. It wasn't as extensive as apparently this is, but it still made one hell of a case. It says, continuing on, it says, over the last 30 years, the average wealth of white families has grown by 84%. A rate 3 times the growth of black wealth. Every year, the average wealth of white households increases by over $18,000. That's a year. While the average wealth increases by only $2,250 for Latinos and just $750 for black households. That's a goddamn shame. And a lot of you want to stay here and, basically just crawling up that sandy way or trying to ice skate uphill, as someone said. It says it will take over 2 centuries for black families to amass the same amount of wealth that white families have in 2016. Because the thing is, they made damn sure, all right, that we could never generate or accrue generational wealth. I put it that way. All right. All the settlements and towns that we built, and we had our own shit. They burned it down, murdered us. Some of those towns are underneath lakes now. All right. And we're the only ones they've done this to. All right. These immigrants, they come over here and they're told lies. All right. And they have attitudes. Now, I have to say, I have to just put this out there. I'm sorry. Moab knows that they are a buffer between us and Edom. They know this. Apparently, they've known it for a very long time, but they still play that game. But even they're getting sick of this. On my next video, I was listening to a video last night on the way back home, and everybody's sick of these fucking. It goes into the white woman's tears and how dangerous they are. All right, for people of color. Anyway, it says blacks make up an unlucky 13% of the U.S. population, but own a meager 2.6% of America's total wealth. And whites still own pretty much everything else. While wealthy whites are getting even richer, all of the financial gains made by the black middle class over the last 30 years have been virtually wiped out by this latest economic downturn called the Great Recession. All right. So that was 2008. All right. So I'm just going to skip through some of this. This is a quote, and they got this devil here. Yeah. So this is a quote from the person that our people were taught to revere. This is Martin Luther King Jr. It says, and this question of his, it says, why does white America delude itself, and how does it rationalize the evil it retains? He concluded quite harshly that white people's belief in the fairness of America is a fantasy of self-deception and comfortable vanity. There aren't enough white persons in our country who are willing to cherish democratic principles over privilege. Why? Because it is against their very nature. For those said principles, it is a game that they play. I refer you to Wisdom of Solomon, 2nd chapter. This is who you're dealing with. All right. This is why I have this up here. This is Jeremiah. This goes into self-deception. This is Jeremiah 17:9. It says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? All right. See, he thinks he's escaped. He thinks he's slick. And I'm talking about the nation of Edom, the so-called white man. All right. He knows his time is short, as it implies in Revelation chapter 12, verse 12. He knows these things. He's getting ready. The problem is, our people, the majority of which do not even care or are aware of what's going on. They still are of the opinion that everything's going to be all right. These churches that Jake go to, they're pushing that same message. Oh, everything's going to be all right. Don't you worry. And they're going to be even more instrumental in this second round of what's coming with this so-called medical emergency that they're trying to, they're taking a little sweet time now because they probably figured out that people aren't going to go for it this time around. They had this little thing with the airports, the planes being grounded yesterday. Come to find out, the airline is suing, or the airlines, all right, are suing the Biden administration because of the juicy juice and all that. Rumor has it that motherfuckers are dropping dead left and right. It's just everything is falling apart. So where he couldn't accomplish with his guile, with his deception, he's going to be forced, all right, to use his sword. That's the point I'm trying to make. And like I say, Jacob's trouble is very real. We're going to experience it very soon. All right. It goes into, it says, this book examines America's complex architecture of white supremacy, from the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of government to private enterprise of every type. See, and this is another thing our people don't understand. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. They're both plantations. You know, it doesn't matter. That's why we tell you, Revelation 13 and 11 about the dragon that spake. Well, let's get it real quick. I don't want to butcher it. It does not matter. All right. And it says the second beast, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. All right. Very deceitful. All right. And that's what these people have succeeded in doing, keeping our people going back and forth. If you're not working your ass off, you're all consumed in stuff that you shouldn't be consumed with. And that's why we're out here on the highways and byways trying to tell our people, wake up to what's real. All right, wake up. First of all, realize who you are and who your power is, who your God truly is, and his son, who is your Savior, and that's Yahweh Shai, and the High Father's name is Yahweh. All right, not JC and God. All right, that's what the so-called white man gave you. Our mortal enemy, by the way. That means someone who's trying to kill you. Going back to Genesis 27:38 through verses 41. All right. It says, let's see, from the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of governments to private enterprise of every type, from the media, which is a huge weapon in the arsenal of Edom, from the media to the labor unions to the religious institutions, another huge weapon, all right, as far as deceit goes. All have agreed, that's the false prophet says, all have, Roman Catholic Church, all have agreed on one thing: the white race must prevail always and always by any means necessary. And that's exactly the attitude that they take. And they have a lot of our people thinking they're so just, all right, and all about righteousness. No. They're the devil. They're liars and deceivers. That's what devil means. As Dr. King said, white America may have deluded itself, but it can no longer hide its history from its victims. The odious underbelly of white people's oft-claimed superiority must now be exposed. This is the untold story of American white supremacy. This is how white folks got so rich. And it has, number one, the Indian land grab. All right, and it's also referred to as the Red Holocaust. They call Gad, Reuben, the red man, when they are. All right. Actually, that's what Edom means, out of woman, in the Hebrew. And it says, from the very start of Europe's colonization of America, the invading settlers were begging their British king to destroy the savages. That's what Indian actually means. At an even faster rate than he already was. King George III's slowness to annihilate the Indians was one of the reasons the founding fathers wanted to separate from England. So the king over there wasn't acting fast enough for these devils over here. Now understand, King George III had his own problems. If you're not familiar with the madness of King George, he had, what was that disease? Porphyria? Something to do with the blood. I can't, not relevant to this, but yeah, he had his own issues. It says their Declaration of Independence calls them the merciless Indian savages. This is how they managed to get it in their mind. These people were worth taking everything from and murdering. All right. And early Thanksgiving holidays were actually celebrations of successful racial massacres. Point blank, it tells you that's what Thanksgiving was. Like we've been saying for years. And those before me for years, decades even. But you all won't believe it. You got Jake up here, slobbering at the mouth, trying to eat some turkey and stuffing and cranberry sauce, and don't even know what that represents. It says the Red Holocaust was systematic, calculated, and extremely profitable, meaning it was no accident. They knew very well what the fuck they were doing. Colonial merchants supplied the British, Dutch, French, and American armies to ethnically cleanse the Indian nations from their ancestral lands. Let me further say, this is why they don't want critical race, what they call theory, taught in their schools. And it's going to even get worse, because I heard today that these so-called Jews, since all this information is coming out on them, they say that they never really got involved as far as, the Constitution, as far as it says. I'll have to go back into it, but in other words, they're going to start tightening down and really pushing for more protection for themselves is what I'm trying to get at. So this might be indeed a catalyst for the famine of the word, because they're getting really paranoid. They feel these walls closing in. All of this truth, the truth, I have to be careful about that, because we had some idiot talking about, y'all say this truth. No, it's the truth. All right? And it's tearing them a new one. They can't, but hey, this is Hosea 5 and 6, the prophets have hewn them by the words, and they can't take it. It's just the truth. We're not out here with guns and, all the crazy shit. It's just the truth. Wow. Once the armies retreated, it was those merchants who surveyed and divided the land into lots and began selling them to the white settlers. The land's value was created out of thin air, and these property rights were then protected by the armies of the new U.S. government. Legendary American frontiersmen like Daniel Boone and even pre-President George Washington were actually surveyors in the employ of these merchants. There goes the so-called father of this country, all right, measuring out property lines and killing all Indians, so-called, that remained. The force Washington led fought 20 battles in 10 months against the people who lived on that land for thousands of years. And they'll be the first to come out of their mouth, well, we worked hard. No, you're just a bunch of murdering, racist pieces of shit that stole and murdered, raped and robbed for everything that you got. And that's right about that self-delusion, because this is how you deal with it. This is how you deal with the knowledge of what your people do. These people aren't stupid. They know what the fuck they've done. Between 1787 and 1871, America entered into 400 treaties with the Indians. and promptly broke every last one of them. President Andrew Jackson, his Indian Removal Act of 1830 initiated a series of genocidal wars against the remaining Indian nations. The policy confined the survivors to about 310 reservations, where they can be found today as wards of the United States. If you are a ward, you have a warden, therefore you are in captivity. The Dawes Act. Massachusetts Congressman Henry L. Dawes drafted federal legislation enacted in 1887 that ordered the registering of Indians so that they could receive an allotment of their own land. But to get on the Dawes rolls, Native Americans had to change their names to make them English sounding. This allowed white officials to slip the names of their relatives and friends onto the Dawes rolls and illegally reap for themselves millions of acres of land. These dirty motherfuckers. But the beloved Bishop Tazadakwa told you this in that very well put together video he did several months back. It says, in one state alone, the 138 million acres of Indian-held land at the time of the Dawes Act of 1887 had been reduced to 47 million acres by 1934. So in a span of 47 years, you went from 138 million acres to 47 million before the act was repealed. It says, ultimately, the Indian Holocaust netted for the white man 2.3 billion acres of free land, land that has a government estimated value of 23 trillion with a T dollars. I've said oftentimes throughout my videos, and I'll say it again, the time since Columbus, 1492, until around about this time here, I usually put it at the eve of the Civil War, around 1860. Civil War started in 1861. That whole time period involved a massive theft and transference of wealth between the Israelites and these heathen nations, primarily Edom, the so-called white man. That's what that was about. And it hasn't stopped, but the bulk of it happened then. All right. Look at this. This is, you got indigenous Americans scraping for candy thrown at them by whites like animals. That's that picture there. I'm going to end it. This is just, like I say, one video for every topic here. It's going to be a while. But I'm going to close it by this right here. And you wonder why we bring this out. This is James chapter 2, verse 13. For he shall have judgment without mercy, that hath showed no mercy, and mercy rejoiceth against judgment. See, when you get the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, when you look up Edom, who is the so-called white man, it will tell you he is the only nation, all right, that will receive no mercy from the Most High. And you wonder why. Hey, until the next video, Shalom.